Hello again everybody. I'm really sorry to have to bring up the L12 again, version 5 in particular. But I've called this Epilogue because I'm not going to make any more videos about the L12 because I've had it up to here. Let me bring you up to date. First of all, a brief recap as to why I'm actually making this video and the problems of the past. Ron and myself both purchased the latest version of the L12, which is version 5, and we purchased them on the day of release that the advertisements first appeared. Ron purchased a kit version and I purchased the complete ready-to-go version. The idea was that I would get mine pretty quickly, as was the case, and I wanted to be one of the first to review it because, as you know from the past, I've always recommended previous versions of the L12 and was, to be honest, quite excited to be able to show you the version 5. I got my product, plonked it on a heatsink and did the test that you've seen. Well, hopefully you've seen from the previous videos. It showed up quite plainly as being unstable. It wasn't so much oscillating, it was just unstable at near clipping point. Now, you could always argue, and some have, does it really matter if it goes unstable at clipping? Well, I suppose if you only run it at 5 or 10 watts, no, it doesn't. Equally, it shouldn't be unstable. I mean, it shouldn't. Any other amplifier I've tested, I have not found stability issue. In the meantime, Ron received his kit and assembled it completely independent of me. And I said to him, will you test it in the usual way, using the standard test that we do, you know, maximum power, clipping, square wave, all the usual stuff. He came back to me and said, oh, it looks like it's unstable. Did you get it? Was it unstable for you? And I said, well, yes. I wanted you to independently confirm it. So he had the kits and built it as per instructions. Both worked perfectly, by the way, apart from this issue. So we had unstable boards. Now, at the time, there was no one, or I had no way of contacting LJM. I didn't know where he existed or what. So we were on our own. One or two people eventually came to us and said, I've got this board and I found it's unstable in the same way. So that was itself encouraging. So we not only now had two boards from the opposite sides of the planet that were unstable, but one or two people had commented to me that they purchased them and found the same issue. So clearly there was an issue. But at that stage, we had no idea what the problem was. Ron started to mess about with it and look for where it could be. And we spent probably 2 weeks before we came up with a solution that actually worked, and we published that along with the circuit diagram. Incidentally, we were the first to publish I think we're the only people to publish the full circuit diagram. Now, after we publish the results, the amplifier did perform rather well, and ironically, quite independently, we found that the mods that we did made it almost the same as the Series 2 version 4.2. We've gone back to almost the L12 as it was without even realizing it. The next breakthrough was I managed to get a message to LJM. He actually responded pretty quickly and said that he had found on a limited number of early product that there was some faulty driver transistors, and they are the ones, if I grab a board, which I have copious amounts of now, they are the transistors fitted on this heatsink and this heatsink. There's two actual devices on this one, and there's one device on that one. All the details about it I've shown you previously. He did say to me that he would send me a board with the new transistors on them. But 3 weeks passed before I received them because, first of all, the Chinese holidays meant nothing happened for 2 weeks. So again, we were on our own for 3 weeks. And at this stage, there have been copious amounts of information on the do-it-yourself audio forums. Let's bring you right up to date now. I finally received 2 replacement boards from LJM. They had clearly 3 transistors had been replaced. I've put them on the bench, tested it, and I have to report that the board now works perfectly. So you don't need to modify it at all. I would still suggest there are a couple of, they're not issues exactly, but things that, in my humble opinion, need addressing. One of them is current that flows through the drive circuit, in my opinion, is way too high. And if I show you this board again, this group of transistors, or there's a pair on here, that heatsink gets too hot to touch after it's been on a few minutes. That is not good. Because what happens is, if I turn the board round, excuse all the other stuff on here because this is early tests, but what will happen is it will eventually make that part of the board black, and it will also make dry joints on the transistors, because I've seen that on vintage audio where it's got these transistors drivers usually that run red hot, and they eventually damage the board. There's no reason for that to be that hot. Ironically, some of the mods that we did on the faulty boards, we reduced that current. Now, I'm not talking about reducing the quiescent current, but the drive, the current that flows through those drivers. There's no need for it to be that hot. It adds nothing, and it just makes the board take quite a long time for the quiescent current to adjust. But saying that, I'm not doing any more changes to these boards. If you have unstable boards, I would suggest you get them replaced. This is the transistor that is correct, or one of them. It's a 2SA1837, and it looks like this. And by comparison, this is what the one that was supplied looks like. It was suggested originally that certain transistors were faulty. Ron had different transistors in his kit compared with what I had in the ready-built thing, and both of us had troubles with instability. Getting back to what I was saying, if you've already purchased these boards or kits and they haven't got this transistor in them, I would make arrangements rather quickly to get them replaced, or the boards replaced, or whatever you do. Obviously, if it's a complete item, you don't want to be messing about with the boards, you just want to send you some new ones. But the new ones appear to be good, And as yet, I still haven't done any audio listening tests. They measure well now and no problem with stability, but I still don't know if they sound very well. But saying that, Ron has his boards and he has the original faulty ones with the modifications on them, and he's quite happy with that. He's using those on a daily basis and loves them. While all this was going on, there was various communications from LJM, and one of them was he complained that the problem wasn't the transistors, even though he said they were first of all, but it was because I was using switch mode power supplies. That largely is nonsense, to be perfectly honest. I am using switch mode power supplies, and I've used switch mode power supplies for every test on every amplifier I have ever done, and I've not had stability problems. So really that makes that comment nonsense. Another point is that Ron's test equipment are linear power supplies. Theoretically, there shouldn't be a problem for him, but there was. So I don't think it's got anything whatsoever to do with the power supplies. But I'm going to show you a slide now of what LJM suggested was the answer. And this is it. I mean, it may well be an answer, but to have to spend all that money on extra smoothing and decoupling components, chokes that you've got to hand make, I mean, to me that comes under the heading of I nearly said something really rude there beginning with B. It may well make it stable, but you shouldn't have to do that. I've never encountered amplifiers that don't like. So many amplifiers these days use switch modes power supplies. The one that I'm building just out of sight here won't have a switch mode because I don't like them. But mostly I don't like them because most of the AliExpress and eBay ones are crap. They're unreliable, grossly underrated, they overheat and blow up. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-switch mode power supply. I'm anti-Alibaba and places like that. And it's like the same problem with the amplifiers. They're all built to a price and they generally have inadequate heat sinking by a long, long way. And they claim, say, 500 watts. And they're like the amplifiers. There's no way they're going to give you 500 watts. And if they do, it's usually for a very short time because the heat sinks overheat and they go bang. And they're not really repairable because, in all honesty, they're not worth repairing because they're just junk. So what's my final epilogue on this subject? And I really, really am not going to mention L12s again because I've had it up to here with messing with them. I've wasted probably a month of my life, and at my age I haven't got many months, so I'm not even going to. Anyway, the conclusion is you should now be able to purchase L12 version 5 with reputedly no faults. Obviously I can't test every one. The two boards that I have here, which I've tested, LJM sent me those, and it looks like he or someone has modified them himself. So whether they're the current production, I really don't know. I'd like to think so. And other than the fact that the drivers and QI area gets way too hot, it's an okay amplifier. As I said, I haven't listened to them, but that is coming up. I shall listen to them. My advice would be, if you can still purchase the 4.2 version, that's what I personally would probably advise you to do. But you'll have to make sure that that's obviously going to be a short-term thing, because eventually there won't be any left. So if you're going to think of doing that, I would jump in pretty quickly. But make sure the vendor knows and has the 4.2, otherwise you'll end up with version 5. If you're one of the few people that have got the original boards and you've modified them, in all honesty, I would just stick to the modified board. I'm interested to hear from anybody that does change or modify, or what your experiences has been with these boards. As a final postscript to this video, I would just like to make a comment to LJM himself, if he happens to be able to view this, and possibly not, because of the restrictive practices of the Chinese governments that stop them viewing YouTube, as I've heard from many people. Now, he did comment that there are certain things on the board to help anti-piracy, and it didn't help very much, because we soon worked out what they were, like that little black blob and tracks and traces that go nowhere. But there is a very good way to stop piracy of your boards. It's a very simple one. First of all, you only have a restricted number of distributors, shops or wholesalers, whatever you'd like to call it, and you publish their names and addresses on your website. And let's say you have half a dozen. These are the 6 official distributors of your amplifiers. That way people can look at that and know that they can purchase from those 6 distributors, that knowing that they have your approval and your authorized board. So any other person in China, in any country for that matter, that's reputedly selling the L12 in whatever guise, you will know, and the public will know, that it's a fake or a copy of a copy. So that's my advice, which will help all my viewers. Leave a comment below if you think that's a good idea, and address it to LJM. I'm sure he'll be delighted, if somewhat bewildered by these comments. Thank you for watching.